direct heavy guitar riffs, textured melodies, and a gradual yet intense build-up are just some of the ways one could describe Mogwai, a post-rock band who formed in Glasgow, Scotland in 1995. Since then, they've toured the world, produced 10 albums, worked on Grammy-nominated soundtracks, and even brought out their own whiskey. We caught up with Stuart Braithwaite to discuss their latest offering, As the Love Continues, which positioned itself high up on the UK album chart upon release, perhaps in part thanks to its infectious, positive tone.
Hi Stuart.
Hi Marjorie, how you doing?
Very good, very good. I'm really excited to be chatting to you because it's quite a special time for you. This is your 10th studio album, and it's not only that, it's also the 25th year since you released your first ever single. So these are like two landmark numbers for Mogwai. How does it feel?
It feels really good actually. Like I've kind of been feeling quite nostalgia about when we started the label and folded up all the 7-inch singles ourselves, and I mean the label's grown a lot, but I mean it's still pretty cottage industry. So I think that kind of is maybe one of the reasons that the record doing this well feels like such a big deal, because it's not like we've become some big huge corporate machine or anything like that. It's still painfully independent, you know.
Your new album is called As the Love Continues, and it's super positive. There's a lot of a hopeful vibe going on with it. Can you tell me a bit about the title choice?
Yeah, we had some other names and they were okay, but they were all a bit kind of silly, and it was just something Martin's daughter Mary said. He just really liked it. We just thought it sounded like a nice album title, so yeah. We basically stole it from a child.
Mogwai as a band are notorious for their single, but also album title tracks. It's such a pleasure going through your track listing. Just to note a few from this album, you've got Celine Granny, Here We Go Forever, Richie Sacramento. Now, you said that this often comes from weird things you hear people say in everyday life or that you guys say yourselves. How do you keep track of it? Do you write it in a little notebook or something?
We're not even that sophisticated. I think we all just use the notes on our phones. We already started writing some good ones for our 11th album, actually. There's no music, but started getting some good titles together.
Can you tell us any in particular?
No, they're all secret. They're all secret for now.
Fair enough. You were supposed to actually go and record this album in New York State with David Friedman, who's worked with Mercury Rev and also MGMT, and obviously on a number of your own albums. And instead, because of this global pandemic that took over the world, you ended up in a church in England. How different an experience was it compared to what you expected, and how did it affect the end result?
It was a bit different. Dave couldn't be there, so we just had Dave on a screen like we were talking just now. And that actually worked fine because we know him so well. The whole album was delayed too. We were meant to go in May, and you couldn't go anywhere in May, never mind America. You still can't go to America. So it gave us a bit more time. So I think the record's probably a bit more focused because of the time we had and just because of the circumstances. I think you couldn't do anything last year, so it just felt like so special to be able to do something. So yeah, it worked out really well.
And speaking of the pandemic, you also had some interesting collaborations on the record, notably Atticus Ross from Nine Inch Nails, who you'd already worked with on a soundtrack, and apparently he was conducting a string orchestra in Budapest from LA, which sounds pretty incredible. Do you think that when the world comes back to normal after the pandemic, we're still going to be using those sort of types of ways to produce albums? Is that going to stay?
I think so. I mean, to be honest, the kind of remote recording, that was probably happening occasionally anyway. I know Tony, who engineered it for us, he'd recorded a lot of orchestras in Eastern Europe because I think it's quite a cost effective way of doing it. But yeah, I think in a lot of areas of life, people have realised that you don't have to travel for everything.
It's been about a year since I've been to a gig, and I know that you missed gigs yourself, and you, as Mogwai, put on a really cool show in Tramway in Glasgow, which was broadcast at different times across the world to fit the kind of gig timescale. How did it feel for you doing that?
It was lovely in a lot of ways. It was great to be back with our crew, who obviously we normally spend so much time with, and we haven't seen them much at all. So it was great to be with them. It was good to play the songs live too, because we played kind of live in the studio, but it's not quite the same as everyone just setting up on a stage and playing them. So it was a good experience, and it was quite emotional actually when it went out. People responded really well. So yeah, I'm really, really, really happy with how that went.
I want to move on also to your career as a soundtrack maker. You've worked, amongst others, we mentioned it, Leonardo DiCaprio's environmental documentary Before the Flood. You've done one on nuclear power called Atomic, as well as a documentary on French footballer Zinedine Zidane. There's also Les Revenants, the French series. And most recently, the Italian crime drama 000. Is it easy for you to switch hats from being Mogwai as being making your own music to Mogwai, the soundtrack composers?
Yeah, it is. I mean, when we're doing a soundtrack, we're really doing what the director wants. So we've kind of got a lot of instructions and ideas, and they'll want a certain sound palette of the kind of music we make. Whereas with their own stuff, it's like we can do whatever we want. So they're both very different. Sometimes we'll write a piece of music for a record that maybe sounds a bit too much like a soundtrack, and we'll hold it back for something like that. But yeah, they're definitely a bit different.
I noticed that a lot of these soundtracks that you made were for European, notably French and Italian pieces of work. What's your relationship with Europe as a band, and with France in particular?
Well, I love France. My sister used to live there, and Elizabeth, my wife, grew up in France. So I've got a great connection with France. And Europe as a whole, we feel part of it. We feel that Scotland's part of Europe, and we're all really depressed about Brexit. So we definitely want to be closer to Europe rather than further away.
You donated the proceeds of the 000 soundtrack release on Bandcamp to both the UK National Health Service, the NHS charities, and also to funds for musicians who are struggling to survive, between the pandemic and touring. What measures would you like to have seen, for music and the music industry as a whole, maybe the British and the Scottish government take?
I think they just need to support people more. I think there's a handful of industries that have literally just stopped dead, and I think that they should have earmarked those industries and just made sure those people were okay until it restarts. Because I just worry that a lot of people will have to find different ways of making a living and struggle to get back to it. Mm-hmm. So I think that's been bad. As far as Brexit goes, I think that the UK government and the EU should try and work out some kind of visa passport. Mm-hmm. Apparently the EU were okay with it and the London government were against it because they don't want European musicians coming here, which is just ridiculous. So,
if we could dream a little bit, what do you want next for Mogwai? What's the post-COVID, post-pandemic?
just back to playing gigs, just back to playing some gigs and just being in a room with people. I think that's what everyone wants. And yeah, nice to be able to go somewhere else.
Well, anyway, there's a new album that's yours, and it's full of hope, panache, and it gives a lot of hope and happiness, I think, in those difficult times. So thank you very much for making it. We wish you all the best with it.
Thank you.